Damn, not me filming 3 videos within the span of 1 week, but it's already midway through October, and if you know anything about spooky season, it is a busy month for horror fans. We just got Terrifier 3 and The Substance earlier this month. I still need to check that one out. We have Time Cut later this month on Netflix, which sounds almost exactly like Totally Killer from last year. Still excited though, I love a good whodunit slasher. But today we have Smile 2. Now, Smile was one of my favorite horror films of 2022, and as a massive fan of the original, I couldn't wait to dive back into this unsettling universe. And while it doesn't surpass the first film, it definitely stands as a solid sequel that expands on the lore and brings at least a good handful of new scares. A good chunk of the beginning of this review is just going to be my general spoiler-free thoughts for the film. There's not too much to say without spoiling anything, so it's going to be a pretty short section, but don't worry, I will be leaving a timestamp down below. But just a forewarning, this review is going to be primarily spoiler-filled. Alright, so getting into it, this time around the story centers on Skye, an international pop star portrayed phenomenally by Naomi Scott. Casting a celebrity as the next target of the Smile curse is just pure nightmare fuel. The constant public scrutiny and lack of privacy amplify the horror tenfold compared to Rose's in the first film as a doctor. Naomi Scott's performance is so convincing, and her flaws make her feel like a genuine person. Also, she sounds amazing in this film. Like, if you told me she's an actual pop star, I'd believe it. Her songs are on point. Anyways, Smile 2 maintains the unsettling atmosphere of the original while introducing new elements that expand the universe. The trauma explored here feels just a little bit more intense and tragic though. The pacing is still relentless, though it does feel a bit more bogged down at times compared to the first film. The scares here are effective, but some feel derivative or less impactful than those in the original. They either felt like they were ripped directly from the first film or just way too similar.
Your emergency.
The supporting characters though, like Skye's friend Gemma, her manager, her assistant, I can't remember his name, or her mom, Elizabeth. Is that her mom's name? I think it's Elizabeth. If it's not, that's so embarrassing. Anyways, this time around, this group of characters are just a little bit more empathetic than the often unsupportive figures, such as like Trevor or Rose's therapist in the original film. This time around, they're just a little bit more bearable, though they all still kind of suck anyways, since they're just basically leeching off of Skye's fame and talent. Alright, so that's about it. That's pretty much all I have to say about the film that's not spoiler filled, because that's the bulk of this review. So if you don't want anything ruined for you, this is your chance to click off now. If not, let's dive into it. So from the get-go, the film starts off with a bang. The opening scene is intense, just like the first, immediately pulling you back into the relentless pace that made the first Smile so gripping. However, I couldn't help but feel that Joel's character was wasted. Killing him off at the beginning felt cheap, a huge waste of Kyle Gallner. It was a bold move to shock the audience, but it definitely left me wanting more from his character. So this time around, again, one of the film's strengths is how it handles trauma. Much like Rose's backstory with her mother's overdose in the first film, Smile 2 delves deep into Skye's past substance abuse, which led to a car crash that killed her boyfriend. This adds a heavy emotional weight, and the film dedicates significant time to exploring her guilt and psychological scars. Definitely much more intense and tragic this time around. Now let's talk about Lucas Gage. Lucas Gage delivers a chilling performance, though he doesn't quite outshine Laura's haunting portrayal in the first film. His smile is genuinely creepy. Really good performance, and his death scene, smashing a weight into the face, it's gnarly, and honestly, probably more disturbing than the throat slit scene from the first film. It's uncomfortable to watch, but the effects were so good I honestly couldn't look away. Now, despite not seeing any trailers, I found the scares in Smile 2 actually less impactful if we're excluding the scene with Lucas Gage. Some scenes felt like direct callbacks to the first film, which made them predictable, you know, as one would expect. For instance, during an event that Skye's manager invited her to, Skye's dead boyfriend appears as a disguise used by the Smile curse, played by Jack Nicholson's son. That was kind of cool. He looks like just spitting image of his dad. But anyways, instead of her falling through a table like how Rose does in the party scene, she causes someone else to. This poor elderly lady, I hope she was okay. I think she died. It was a twist, but still just way too familiar to the first movie. The hallucination aspect of the curse also felt way too overused this time around. In the first film, hallucinations like Rose's phone call from the security company or the unexpected visit from her therapist, those were shocking and actually hit pretty well. Smile 2 recreates these with Skye's friend Gemma, but it drags it out for way too long.
Gemma?
While it was effective to an extent and it actually revealed it pretty nicely, it started to feel just way too derivative. And then another thing that I had an issue with, the inclusion of the character Morris was intriguing, but also kind of confusing. On one hand, he provides crucial information about the curse, tying back to the first film by referencing Rose and the whole list of people, emphasizing how long the curse chain has been going. On the other hand, though, his ambiguous existence, whether he's real or another hallucination, it also raises questions. If he is real, then my question would be why we didn't see him interact with Rose in the first film, or at least try to intervene, unless maybe he said he did and I missed it, I don't know. And if he isn't real, then I guess the iMessages would also be a hallucination. I mean, unless, there's an Apple store in hell. Probably. Anyways, the ending is where the film lost me a bit. The third act is filled with intense scenes, Skye seemingly killing her mom, driving off with Gemma to go meet Morris, and planned to end the curse with killing herself like he suggested, since, no host means no parasite, which is essentially what this entity thing is. But when the entity reveals to Skye as Gemma that Gemma coming back into her life wasn't real, it just felt way too much like a cop-out. Then when the entity takes the form of a mangled Skye from her car accident and confronts her, she fights back in a very similar sequence to the first movie. She breaks its fingers and injects herself with the thing that's supposed to stop her heart, seemingly defeating it, but then it's revealed that none of it was real. The entire third act was just one big hallucination, which just feels like a major cop-out and almost like a way to just get the movie from point A to point B without taking the necessary steps or deserving it. This twist does mirror the first film's ending, but stretches it out so long that it almost feels totally irrelevant. It undercuts the impact of everything we've just witnessed because it basically never happened. It was all in our head, so yeah, it just feels like a major cop-out. The film also ends predictably, with Skye succumbing to the curse on stage during a live performance, leading to millions of witnesses and potentially an apocalyptic spread of the curse. Very reminiscent of Blumhouse's Truth or Dare, and while it somehow raises the stakes, I guess, it also risks shifting the series into a different tone and genre completely. It's interesting because director Parker Finn mentioned, in a quote he said, "We've maybe only scooped a single glass of water out of the ocean. I think it's really fun to imagine a lineage of Smile movies where each one becomes more off the rails than the previous one." So I think it's safe to say if a third film happens, it's bound to get even crazier. Visually speaking though, the movie looks very nice. However, it does bring back those weird upside down shots from the first movie. While yes, it is initially unsettling, they now feel more distracting than anything. The entity itself is also shown in greater detail here in this movie with more lighting, especially at that concert. There's lights everywhere so you can see it in full detail. And it somewhat undercuts its scariness, but still the scene where it rips itself out of its Skye disguise is chilling and probably one of the standout moments of the film. The effects in this movie go so hard. The scares themselves though are a bit of a hit or miss. The scene in Skye's apartment with her background dancers all smiling and running towards her down the hallway was genuinely unsettling. And then you got Naomi Scott at the end whenever she finally succumbs to the curse and she takes those microphone stabs to the eye. Very, very hard to watch. However, beyond those moments, most of the scares just felt like typical jump scares, and they felt way too predictable or too similar to those that we've already seen that were actually done well in the first Smile. Another thing, at over 2 hours, this film really does start to drag. The extended hallucination sequences, while stylistically interesting and nice to look at, they don't add much to the plot once they're revealed to be unreal. I feel like with just a few tweaks, they definitely could have altered the ending to the film just a little bit, or at least the third act before the finale, so it maybe could have included some stuff that was real and not just solely hallucinations, because everything and everyone is either manipulated or just completely altered by this thing. So it also somewhat takes the stakes away from this thing, because if it can control everything in a sense, or eventually gain the control within just that short of amount of time, it ends up kind of losing its steam by just knowing that this thing can win regardless. But on the other hand, it is also nice to have a horror movie villain that, just can't be defeated. Maybe in a third film, they'll be able to find that balance. Bottom line, I would say that Smile 2 is a solid sequel that expands on the universe and delves deeper into psychological horror. Yes, the first movie also focuses on psychological horror, but it is brought way more to the forefront in this film. And while it doesn't quite capture the sheer terror of the original, it offers compelling performances, especially from Naomi Scott, and explores themes of trauma and guilt with greater intensity. The soundtrack is scored once again by Disasterpeace. It's phenomenal. His work elevates the film, adding layers of tension and atmosphere that pull you in. I've always loved his soundtracks, such as in It Follows and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. He doesn't disappoint here either. In the end, I would give Smile 2 a solid 9 out of 10. It's not groundbreaking or the scariest horror film out there, but it succeeds in building upon the foundation laid by the first movie. If you liked Smile, you're obviously gonna like Smile 2. It might even surpass the original for some viewers, Personally, I prefer the original, but the sequel definitely earns its spot and sets the stage for future installments. Maybe with time and perhaps a tighter, more horror-focused third film, the series may solidify itself as another iconic horror franchise. Only time will tell. Alright guys, well that about wraps up this video. If you're new here, please consider hitting the subscribe button. We are super close to monetization, so any support is greatly appreciated. I usually have more to say, but it has been a busy week and I have to head immediately into editing after this. So with that being said, I hope you all have a great weekend and you enjoy Smile 2. If you've already seen it, what did you think? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, thank you guys so much for your support. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.